Welcome to Partnerships, Connections, and Relationships, Local Examples of Solidarity. I'm super excited for this conversation. My name is Yasmeen Perez. I work also at King County in the Department of Community and Human Services. And I just want to quickly frame this conversation as of the Unincorporated BIPOC Economic Alliance, although it sounds like that is a work in progress name and TBD on the official name. But this is a conversation to lift up the work that it takes to do alliance building within our society that often is working against that, and within structures and systems that promote scarcity, mistrust, and competition. So this is about the relational work and the strategic work it takes to create connections across communities, and the challenges and opportunities in partnerships, lifting up the importance of our relationships and being able to affect change in our communities and work toward healing and liberation. So really quickly, I want to introduce our panelists. There's some great information about them in their bio in the program, so take a look if you're not familiar with our esteemed panelists. Rebecca Berry is the Skyway Coalition Manager. The coalition aims to champion the voices of the primarily Black and Brown community Skyway with regard to anti-displacement efforts, affordable housing, and economic development. Ryan Quigtar is the Executive Director of the Renton Innovation Zone Partnership, a nonprofit convening over 30 organizations to improve academic outcomes for students and families through a racial equity lens. And Alejandra Tres is the co-founder of Comunidad Latina de Vashon, where she helps craft organizing campaigns based on the brilliance of local leaders, especially youth. So to also briefly introduce the Alliance, as I mentioned, our panelists are co-founders of the Unincorporated Economic Alliance, a formation of community-based organizations from 3 areas of urban unincorporated King County, North Highline and White Center, Skyway, West Hill, and Vashon. They've been building relationships for many years, but came together formally in the last year to advocate for federal development dollars to go to urban areas to build a just economic future for Black and Brown communities. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Feel free to put questions in the chat. And also at the end, we'll have time for folks to unmute and ask questions as well. So I'd love to just say welcome again, everyone, to our panel. Thank you so much. And we can start off with just sharing who is a part of the Alliance and how did the Alliance come together?
Thank you, Yasmeen. I'll start. Also want to say thank you to everyone who is here in this session listening, and some familiar faces in the virtual crowd. So hello. So the Alliance, we formed not necessarily with the intention of forming this alliance around economic development. We formed just kind of by happenstance and relationship building. I got connected to Alejandra actually by way of a grad program that I was a part of last year, doing outreach for small businesses. And, we began just having conversations and building a relationship. And as things progressed, also brought in Helen, who is not here, from White Center CDA, and starting having some conversations around similar challenges that we're facing in unincorporated King County. And as we started just telling our story from our neighborhoods, we started to realize like, oh, we're actually going through something similar. And we have been going through something similar. And Rebecca was then onboarded as well with the Skyway Coalition, and it just grew from there. And I think since then, we have definitely built a familial vibe within the Alliance for sure. So it's been really exciting. So it's still fresh, right? Like I just met Alejandra last year, but in the last 4 months or so, we've really come to be really strong in terms of advocating to the county for some resources. And I know we'll go into that in a little bit. But in terms of the neighborhoods, Skyway White Center, and Vashon Island, all part of unincorporated King County. And I'll stop there if anyone else would like to add.
I mean, the only thing I would add is like to say we build relationships is, I mean, I would say it's the cornerstone of what we do. Every meeting we would ever have with anybody, we would actually put a lot of time. If they gave us half an hour, we're like, nope, we're going to need at least an hour. And everything really started with our why, our story, and very slowly building a connection that really fostered this trust, so that when we had to take action together, we already had a lot of trust built. Like, I know Ryan, I could tell you so many cool stories about Ryan, you know, and then Rebecca came on, and she just came on, and she could have been like, whoa, I just started, but she's like, let's go, let's jump in, you know, what can we do together? And this sense of just always connecting to people about something deeper, about an aspiration, about who we are and who we want to be, really identifies us. And long after Ryan will not be in this position, or Rebecca won't be, I'll continue to have that bond with them. And that really is the cornerstone, the heart, the everything of who we are.
I would just jump in to add that, you know, joining in about 6 months ago, like Ryan had said, there was already established connections and conversations happening. And when I started, it was a little bit, whoa, we're jumping into a lot of different things. This is one aspect of the work that we do in Skyway with the coalition. But I would say there was so much intentionality around building those, not just meet and greet introductions, but really deep sharing, that vulnerability of sharing who you are, not just who your work self is, but who you identify as, who you identify as. And this would happen as new people came on as well. Miss Cheryl Jackson-Williams is not on the call either. You know, when she joined in into a meeting, we started again. And, you know, we all went through that again. And I think in the moment, it could come across as, okay, let's get to the work. What are we doing? But I think it actually was the really big piece around building the connections necessary to get the work done, that trust and vulnerability amongst the team.
You sort of started talking about leading toward action together through this relationship building work that you've been doing. What have you been able to accomplish together in your time as an alliance, and what's been different about taking action together than maybe what you could have accomplished alone?
I'll start this one. What I would say is, again, kind of jumping in to an already building relationship. There was a real sense of, well, I got this one. I've got this lift right now because this is how my schedule looks. This is my expertise. This is what I have to offer, because I know that there'll just be this moving, like I think of like a centipede, the legs, everyone's got a motion at that time. And there was a real sense of we're moving along and we're maximizing and utilizing what people have to give when they can. And I think that there's also a sense of like a shared common struggle, right? So we each kind of have in our communities similar things that were highlighted that we need to tackle. And I think getting the connection that we have that shared struggle, but then maybe we have a different perspective to lend. And then it just kind of wove into a sense of an alliance where we're helping each other with a specific proposal, right, to King County for the funds, but also just in general in this work, we show up and are able to support one another in sharing out resources or support or connecting one another to opportunities.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, a lot of the way this started was that the same connection we have to ourselves, one of the most important pieces that we also have in common, in addition to a commitment to deep relationship building, is that we do that with our community, and our community leads. And what we decided was, I mean, Ryan and I and Helen and I think the first time I talked to Helen, I was just talking to a business and I started crying, and she's like, oh, that's happening in White Center too. I'm like, ah. And it was this sense of like, this was based on hundreds like having listening seasons and thousands of hours of listening to our community about things, frankly, like even though the county was trying to help around COVID, and even before, they were just missing our people. It just was not, the systems were not working. They weren't able to access it. And what we did then was we're like, okay, we're going to have another round of this unless we do something. So instead of just reacting to what was going to be available through King County, we said, well, let's look at what we know. And we put together all our listening seasons and we looked for the overlaps and we said, this is what we need. We actually need more organizing. We need more people in the community who are trusted, who are shepherding them through these like big economic support like applications that scare a lot of the businesses I work with. Heck, I don't really fully understand them sometimes. So, that was really like where our momentum was. And we just had more and more conversations. And our message was like, let's not just react, let's be actors. And I want to say it's about us or about me, but it's so not about me. It is about everybody who was like, yeah, let's do this. Like, I'm exhausted, I'm sad, but yes, let's try to do something together. And that's how we started the campaign.
Yeah, I would just, add in terms of accomplishments, just naming, we got a specific dollar amount out of one of the COVID budgets within the county, $5 million for economic development in Unincorporated. And we'll go into a little bit more detail around that. But I think another piece that has never really happened in my experience, working in Skyway, doing advocacy work, is the dynamic around different districts working together and also kind of forcing the districts or representatives within King County to actually work together. So we've met with, I think, almost all of the county council members during our campaign and really highlighted why this was an important issue and an important investment to make. Specifically in White Center, Skyway, and Vashon. And because we were doing those things and I guess rattling the cage, right, if you will, it caused a lot of internal discussion for them between the different council members and their staff to say, okay, what are we doing? What are we about to, what are we doing to help with this specifically? So I think long term, hopefully that helps too, as more budgets are passed and different decisions are made at the council level, the county council level. They continue to discuss and go through people like us and others to, as Alejandra pointed out, like, what are the people saying, and stay connected that way. So I think that's another accomplishment that has kind of started to bud, and we're starting to kind of see those fruits. So.
Awesome. Can you share more about the challenges
Yasmeen, you're breaking up a little bit for us there. Maybe start again. Let's see if it's better now. Oh, it's breaking up quite a bit.
Maybe putting a question in the chat, Yasmeen.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, great. Perfect. So maybe if it's helpful, I can read that out to you all. So what are the challenges and opportunities in building solidarity between Black and Brown communities right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to take this time to kind of bring in a voice from one of our fellow Alliance members, Cheryl Jackson-Williams, who is not able to be here today, but we kind of had a little discussion about this question. So I just want to bring in some of her thoughts and highlight the fact that she was a big part of this work. She wanted to respond to this question in saying that we're really intentional about like the personal invite and how we set up our space. Even if our Brown community members aren't present, we are conscious of how this work impacts those communities. A lot of people are talking about saying there's a support for BIPOC, but we're really trying to be conscious about centering the voices of Indigenous Black and Indigenous Native populations. She gave an example about some work that this is happening in Skyway, bringing in a community land trust and creating a connection with the community members and the community land trust, and wanting to emphasize that everyone needs to be at the table and to feel included. And so she was kind of pointing out how, starting with education, kind of like a racism 101 or an anti-Blackness 101, giving the background on why something ended up the way that it did, especially in Skyway. So we just try to bring them along by first starting with like education and sharing, and that we're generally experiencing things as a community, and that historically there's just not a lot of conversation that's frank like that starts with centering those voices and then displaying how that impacts. And one of the things that I thought was great in what she wanted to share today was that there's a focus on placemaking. If anyone's talked to Cheryl, I love to listen to how she says it. So I'm hoping I'm capturing it correctly. She just says that she's gonna set a place for, others at the table, and just be ready for you. But also to come and meet you where you are and share bits of food with you until you're ready to sit down and have that meal. So that's that. It's kind of like a metaphor for, building the small relationships, building with education, making sure that there's space, and then meeting people where they are until they're ready to join the table and the work.
Yeah, I could just add, I think there's always challenges, and the question is like, how do you approach them? I think for us, a lot of this, because we are so grounded in our communities, is about leadership development, about building up our people, about activating leaders, right? And this was an opportunity for people, look for those opportunities, right? And to take action. And sometimes taking action is like oxygen. We always build things along the way that, like, even if we don't win, we win. Because, one of the council members says, I don't think I've ever had a Latino youth call me. Or, because we laughed a lot when we thought about sending them piñatas full of stuff. I don't know, like, just because it brought about imagination. And the challenge is the manyfold. The opportunities are to cut a slice of it in however we can, so that it builds our sense of hope and our sense of fun. And I think that's what we tried to do in this process.
I think the only other piece I would add to what Rebecca and Cheryl and Alejandra shared is I think I just kind of look at the system, right, of where Unincorporated has been situated over time, and the lack of investment, the lack of resources, intentional support, right, of being, we've always been told it's a regional government. The infrastructure is definitely not set up to be of more of an individual support, such as the city of Renton, Seattle, so forth. But because of that, right, like you have silos because people individually want to take on the system and make that change. So I think that has been a challenge, is there are a lot of very small pockets of people that are doing work. And that's also an opportunity where through this alliance and the work the coalition's doing and everyone else is, we're starting to discover those pockets and understanding like, oh, okay, like there's this bigger collective or initiative that is kind of going towards your same goal. And so I think that's kind of where we are now, is like really creating that momentum, because we are discovering those people and putting the word out in many different ways of like, here's our goals, here's what we're trying to do. And because we all come from Unincorporated, it's a trusted messenger, right? So you have folks who have been there and are still there, experiencing the same or similar things. So I think that's an opportunity for us right now that we're seeing and building off of to just create more momentum.
I hope you all can hear me better now. I don't know if I missed it, but in case folks are not that familiar with the community, the communities in Vashon and in Skyway, West Hill, and North Highline, is there anything you want to share about kind of who your base is, who your constituency is, and sort of the makeup of the communities that you represent?
Sure. That's a great question. Yes, I was searching my notes. I don't see that. Yes, Skyway. So Skyway, for some people that might not have the background on it, we are in an unincorporated King County area between South Seattle and North Renton. We're about 18,000 residents. We have the largest Black resident population in the state for our zip code, and also a really high diversity level, around 70%. We have decades of advocacy and community work to try to get the necessary supports and resources and access to our community. So for instance, the unincorporated King County areas, we don't have a city council or chambers or these elected experts that work day in and day out for our interests and our passions and our needs. And so our community members have stepped in for quite some time now, and we're just kind of stepping in and joining that momentum and really getting into a lot of work like our alliance building with this work. Ryan, did you have anything to add for Skyway?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll just say a little bit about Vashon and try to say a little bit about White Center too, because we're really like family. Literally, like one of our youth organizers' uncle owns the butcher shop in White Center. We're all very, very connected. Vashon is an island that is only reachable by ferry in unincorporated King County. And kind of going back to like, few people understand. I think most people think that Vashon is wealthier and older, and it's true. And the 20% of the island that landscapes their yards, cooks their homes, cleans their houses, builds their houses. And, we say we're an island inside an island many times. The school system, while a good school system graduates less Latinos than the state average, a lot of times it feels very isolated in addition. And yet many of the same issues that, when we were talking to Ryan or Helen or Rebecca, that we have as small businesses on the island, or just access to workforce, was such a really big issue for us. Were the same issues. And similar to, I think, a lot of places, as we're seeing gentrification, a lot of our Latinos who do these different jobs are finding it harder and harder to find housing. So all these issues really build upon each other. And I think, this is what's so amazing about this. This is rural unincorporated and urban unincorporated really finding the common ground together. And that's what we were looking for. And White Center, I know I won't do it justice, and Helen's so artful about explaining this, but has a large Latino population as well as an Asian population. It's a very diverse zip code as well. And for us, a lot of our Latinos, that's where they go to shop. That's where they go get their hair cut. And so we've already felt like a family in what we were dealing with, and a lot of the things that impact one of us have a ripple effect to the other. And I think it's testament to how much common ground we were able to find, despite really being in different worlds in some ways.
Sorry to say, Yasmeen, but you're cutting in and out again. We might have to do the question in the chat. Great, thank you. So what does it look like to do the work of alliance building? How do you counteract the pressure toward competition and scarcity and instead build trust and accountability?
I think I'll start off here. I also want to bring in, we had a chance to meet with Helen with White Center yesterday, again, to kind of try to bring in her voice and her experience. And she was sharing that in thinking of the alliance work and alliance building, the word healing came to mind. regarding the Alliance and just the ties to our common struggles. And she noted that when we're in conversation, when we're having Zooms, when we're texting, when we're meeting after, to strategize, that there's always a feeling of melting and healing and just a solidarity. And when we were having this conversation, and even now, there's the heads nodding, and I would even add that I always felt very welcomed and accepted, just a really strong sense of belonging. And I would tie that back to, again, our initial establishment of the work. We didn't really focus on the work of the proposals to King County for the money or the this and the that. We focused on who's Alejandra, who's Ryan, what's your story, what brought you here, what can I feel when we get into the room together, and how do you show up? And that brought, I think, a connection and an accountability that superseded the work, because that's how we started. And another point that I want to highlight that Helen shared was when we work in scarcity, that's the problem. We try to work with the mindset of more that there's enough, and your struggle is my struggle, as we have, again, those really common struggles in our communities, being unincorporated and diverse. If it's important to you, it's important to me. When we're in conversations, we tend to bring each other in the room and just really focus on a sense of abundance, and that there's enough to go around.
I would even take it one step further. I think during this process, like a number of us not in Skyway gave testimony for Skyway. All of a sudden I'd find myself in rooms and I'd be like, what are you doing for Skyway? People would be like, why do you care? I'm like, oh, I care. And I know just enough to really say you should be doing more. And I'm going to connect you to the people who will tell you exactly what you should do. And it'll be a great impact for everything you're trying to do. And so I think there was this sense of getting each other's back not just on the issues we're working on, but this idea of like, all right, Skyway, we got your back. You got our back. Let's do this individually and together on whatever we need.
Ryan, did you want to add anything?
No, I think what Rebecca and Alejandra shared was great.
Great. Well, I'm sorry I've been having audio issues. I think we're at the last question before we can open it up for Q&A. And can you share, where things are at with your campaign now and what the Alliance will be working on moving forward?
I'll start. So right now, like we shared earlier, in I think it was the COVID-7 budget that the council passed, there was $5 million awarded for a unincorporated kind of economic development program. Just speaking honestly, it's a little bit broader than what we were advocating for, not to be divisive, just kind of referring back to the last question, or be competitive. But I think when you look at, for us being urbanly situated, and also with Vashon, there's such a huge need, a bigger need, we feel, to be very intentional and very specific around where that money goes. So right now we are essentially in conversation still with King County Department of Local Services, which is the department that oversees unincorporated King County, around the implementation, the next steps of the money, an RFP process to access the funds, who is eligible. We kind of went through and, informed that. So we're kind of waiting on some next steps. And then I think we have a meeting next week scheduled actually to talk through those details and get to implementation. I think, Alejandro, the question I don't remember or the answer to the question I'm going to ask is how long that money is. I know that was a specific detail that we wanted to advocate for. I think we got the longer window. Is that correct?
Yeah, I hope so. It looks that way.
And that was how long again?
I think we have 2 years.
2 years versus a shorter amount of time to get the money out. So now we have a little bit more time for impact, kind of assess and doing any improvements that we need to do with the program.
Yeah, I would just add that, I mean, this is what's different about campaigns, the way we run them, right? Is that I live here. I lived here for 15 years. When I go to the restaurant to pick up like my delicious food, they're like, but Alejandra, what's going on with that thing? And like, so when you win the campaign, you start a new campaign to make sure that the intention of what happened actually gets seen, because it wasn't my idea. It was the idea of hundreds of people we talked to, thousands of hours, and we have to respect that. And we have to continue to fight for it. And I think whenever there is some funds, there becomes this like, well, it could be for this and it could be for this, or, oh, I've never done workforce, but all of a sudden I could. And it's just like, well, that integrity around like who's really doing the work, who's really in the community. Somebody parachuting in who hasn't been here is not going to be as effective. And yes, you can spend the money that way, but it's not going to accomplish what this really could accomplish. Not only for like the deliverables of what we're thinking, but for what it builds for this idea of who we are and who we can be. Because my community is very much like, well, Alejandra, my son graduates this year. We need to do more on his workforce. We don't know what's going on. What's he going to do next? Like that's what I had when I picked up coffee before this. So our campaigns are from the community, linked to the community, and the community continues to hold us accountable. So we'll continue the conversations to make sure that their leadership and their ideas does not get lost.
The only other thing I wanted to say kind of goes back to the description of unincorporated and the connection of infrastructure. So DLS has less than, I know they've been doing some hiring, I'll just say less than 10 employees. I think they're now like maybe 5 or 6. Unincorporated King County is roughly 250,000 people. So in terms of infrastructure and like a specific department dedicated, right, to serving and supporting, that's just not enough, right? So that was another reason why we also felt, when you think about $5 million towards economic development in unincorporated, that's not enough either. So that's why we wanted to be really intentional about the neighborhoods, that the money went towards. There absolutely should be more money that goes towards economic development. And we have a very detailed proposal that we had submitted to the county, neighborhood specific, again, to Alejandra's point, based on what everyone has shared with us, the community. And so I think related to also what, just building off of Alejandra, when a decision's made, this is kind of where the bureaucracy also hurts community organizing, in the sense that a decision has been made and now the community and people want to feel something tangible. They want to see that, whether it's a job workforce development program or new, job readiness, whatever. If they don't see that, then that's also a place where trust can be lost between the organizers and the community. And speaking specifically for Skyway, that has happened in the past. So I think that's also why we are keeping, our foot on the gas pedal. Like, hey, we need to start this ASAP. So that's kind of a next step too, and why we have this meeting is we need to know what we're doing, and when, so we can continue to, keep our people informed.
Communities they serve. I want to put it up questions.
Sorry, Yasmeen, I can't really, just me, but I can't hear you.
I will put it in the chat.
Thank you. It's unfortunate because sometimes we can hear you sort of right at the end of what you're saying. So I think you were opening it up for questions. I'm pretty sure. So if folks have questions for our panel that they want to put in the chat. Oh no. Oh, I sound funky too. Thanks, Yasmeen.
You're more clear now, Lynn, but you were a little choppy. We can hear.
All right, great. Yeah, just reminding folks to put any questions in the chat. Or if you want, you can go ahead and we can show audio and video on this stream. So if you are interested, you can click to turn your audio and video on if you want to ask questions directly that way. Yeah, we definitely tried some troubleshooting. And yeah, as always goes with the new platform, right? Right, we'll just give folks some time to type in the chat. Okay, Roxana, either feel free to type it in, or if you want to turn on audio or video, it will give me a prompt to share that on screen. So it looks like Roxana's question, what is a call to action you have for communities that are connected to resources? Oh, good question.
I'll start, and this is just a immediate action reaction. Still kind of processing that and thinking on that. I think collectively, the Alliance has absolutely wanted to just bring attention to unincorporated King County. That has always been something we've done individually as well. The work of Skyway historically has been look at unincorporated. White Center as well with the CDA and a lot of those folks, and same in Vashon. But now collectively, like I was saying before, one community we would say is connected to resources, right, is the county council themselves is, hey, you need to spend intentional dollars in unincorporated for everything. To funders as well. There's funders in the last 6 months that were like, hey, we're considering Skyway. And then, oh, actually, you don't meet a criteria. You don't have this thing. And it's really interesting because in any map that King County has ever produced or any data that you look at, a lot of unincorporated, especially within our alliance, the geographies we represent are always red hot in all the different indicators: displacement, economics, poverty. You name it, it's there. And so to me, there's no denying why you wouldn't dedicate intentional resources to urban unincorporated neighborhoods. And so I think the infrastructure definitely needs to be built. And through all of us, the coalition, Skyway Coalition, White Center, CDA, and Comunidad Latina, like we're trying to do that. And it's a capacity thing too, right? Like me and Rebecca were just on a call earlier today. We looked at a potential funding opportunity and we said, we can't do it right now because we don't have enough people who are funded to be able to dedicate that time, one, to apply, but then do the work. So I think there's just so much there around just being aware that we exist and that we have a very different problem in terms of who we have to help make our decision, right? It's only King County. There is no city of Seattle and you have multiple folks there. That we don't have that. It is one person. Ours is our council member Girmay, and Vashon White Center is council member McDermott. That's it. So I think that's something that just immediately comes to mind.
I just want to add before I add something. Can you all hear me, or do I sound painfully robotic?
Yeah, relatively robotic. Yeah. Let's see. Sometimes it just takes a second to catch up there. Go ahead. Thanks, Alejandra. Rebecca, do you have anything to add to Ryan's response with the question?
First of all, I think, that's exactly one of my first reactions, Ryan, is just if other communities could just understand that concept of what unincorporated means. But we were just on a call with Puget Sound Sage the other day, kind of getting some information about some things we're working on, and they were able to kind of connect us to some resources. And I think that's also really valuable in this work, is to be able to be connected to other opportunities, information, or resources to support the work, after first understanding that what unincorporated means to our communities. So I would just say, for other communities with resources, just how to connect us to those resources that align with what we're working on.
Great, thank you so much. Great question, Roxana. Another question in the chat: how does the coalition respond when one group receives more resources than the others? Ryan, you were sort of hinting to this a little bit in your remarks about not really competition. So I don't know if you want to start us off there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if we've necessarily faced that situation just yet, in terms of resources that I can think of. The money that we got through the COVID-7 budget is really the first pool of resources that we've received, and that's, kind of collective. So I think it goes back to one of the questions Yasmeen, talked about around trust and accountability. We're very transparent, and that gets back to our relationship, right? And the bigger goal. So I think I'm not too worried, I guess, if that happens, because we're always sharing information. That's one piece, like all the time. So I think when that time comes, it'll absolutely be a discussion of how can this get into Vashon or Skyway if White Center gets it, and any other neighborhood, vice versa. So.
I'm going to try unmuting and see if you can hear me now. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Great. There's another question in the chat that is also related to work that I've been doing with community in Skyway and North Highline. So I'm glad that, Jill, you posed this question. There's a lot of displacement and gentrification happening in Skyway, White Center, and many other parts of King County. Can you talk about the anti-displacement approach and strategies of your campaign, or sort of the relationship, I assume, between the economic development resources and new investments and anti-displacement?
I was pausing to see if Rebecca or Alejandra had anything first. Thank you, Jill, and hello. Good to see you as well. Thank you for being here. Another just kind of immediate reaction that comes to mind is when you look at the number of opportunities that surround our neighborhoods in terms of different sectors of our economy, for our youth, for anyone to be introduced to. I'll speak from Skyway's standpoint right now. We don't have a whole lot of jobs in our neighborhood. So if I'm a teenager and I wanted a summer job, I would say there's definitely less than 20 spots that I could really look to get employment in my neighborhood. I'd have to go down to the city of Renton, go to Seattle or Tukwila. So in terms of economic development, like, we're really looking at the entire spectrum of what that means. And then how it relates to anti-displacement, for me, what I'm thinking is when people have stable jobs and actual living wage careers, like, that's one piece of anti-displacement. Can you afford where you live? The other part of it is the market that is kind of out of our control. But I think to me, there's really not a whole lot of that in our neighborhoods, and wanting to bring that and build that. Or prepare folks to be in those different sectors that we know that they're most definitely capable of being in. They just never really had those preparations or opportunities exist for them to access. So that was one piece of our program that we wanted to build out. But to me, that's just one example of how that could kind of be approached. So.
Hey all, sorry, I had to, Yasmeen, I followed your lead of coming back on, and I think I can hear everyone a little bit better about that. I hope y'all can hear me better.
Yes, yep, we can hear you.
Sorry. I missed the question as well, but I know that Ryan and Rebecca have it, and I have to say, like, it's a pleasure being on calls with them. Like, you know, when you go into a meeting and you got this thing you feel strongly about and people talk about it beforehand, like they're really strong, and then you go in the meeting and everybody's really quiet and they let you talk about it. That is not our dynamic. Like, I know, right, Ryan? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I know that Ryan's got my back, and like Cheryl, and, you know, we're relational, but we're also clear, because this is not like, we're not doing it for just resources. We're doing it because a stronger unincorporated King County is a stronger King County, and our people have ideas and brilliance to make it so.
I think we have about 10 minutes left, and I lost track if there were any additional questions, but Rebecca and Alejandra, did you want to weigh in on this question about sort of how this campaign, the approach is thinking about displacement and anti-gentrification? And
it sounds like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. It sounds like a great question, but I didn't. Oh, it sounds like I did it. Okay. Was that the question? Because you broke up a little bit and I couldn't hear.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you, Yasmeen. Sorry.
Yeah. Darn it. You sounded like it was a brilliant question.
Okay, it looks like Yasmeen was trying to say, any thoughts on the question about displacement and gentrification? Additional thoughts on that question?
You know, of course, and it's interesting because I think we do have a lot of overlap, and certainly in terms of White Center and Vashon, we have a lot of migration between the two places. And, you know, I think all of us, right? Like, I mean, what's interesting about Vashon, it is literally an island. So when the people who clean houses, cook, landscape can't afford to live in it, they have to move off and then commute back on at great cost, at great stress. And even though that is really concrete in terms of, because we're an island and we're trying to create different ways that people can continue to live here, that frankly, not just because of their ease and impact on them, but because it's a lot of fun. We bring a lot of fun to the community. We have some of the best celebrations, you know, like, and it's really important. But the same thing, those islands are happening in Skyway and White Center. When people get gentrified out and they have to keep moving farther and farther, even though it's not a watery shore, it's the same concepts. And I think it is about intentionally thinking about generational wealth. What does that look like? Generational dreaming of more wealth in our community, and creating concrete plans that make space for the Latino community, specifically on Vashon is what I'm talking about, but like, and thinking about it not just in terms of resources, like the lower income housing you might create for Latino community on Vashon is going to create a wealth of so many other brilliant things that are going to come to the community. So to not always just have it be solely a financial analysis, and really think about us staying in the communities that we're from as adding so much more than just the slightest, slower, like Zillow average of what our houses are worth.
Yeah, I feel like I somehow got lost in the chat trying to find these questions. I think for Skyway, the anti-displacement approach and strategies of your campaign is where we're at. I would think, you know, a lot of what I've heard, I think before I started in this work, but especially starting with the coalition, is, you know, for us, by us. We're really invested in bringing in the voices of our business owners, of our youth with the workforce development. In affordable housing, we're really wanting to lift up their voices so that they're a part of building what's being created, ensuring that they're not also getting pushed out. Because a lot of the time, it'll look fancy and great, and then you're not able to stay there. I mean, I know personally, I'm a renter, and I can't afford to buy a house now in Skyway. So, I mean, that's part of the reason I started to get involved in this work, is I want to be a part of it so that I'm able to build in a way to stay here, because I've chose to live in this community that reflects who I am, who I connect with racially and culturally, and who I want to raise my family around. So I'm tapping in. I want to be involved in building that for us, for our community, to push back as much as we can the gentrification and displacement. And I think I bring that, and I think we bring that as Skyway into this work as well.
It looks like Yasmeen put in the chat. Before we close, please share how folks can get connected or support the Alliance's work.
I'll start. I don't know we have like a landing page or a Facebook page or anything. It's more kind of the folks in the organizations who've helped lead it. So I would say the coalition, the Skyway Coalition is one, and the website we can put in the chat is, I think, skywaycoalition.org. Same with White Center, CDA, and Comunidad Latina. Us here, we're kind of the makeup of the group, missing Helen, Cheryl, and Cynthia today on the call, but definitely through those different connections with the CDA, Comunidad Latina, and the coalition website, we can absolutely connect you to anything you might be interested in. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think and I would add, like many really great organizing, we don't have a fancy website. We're maybe need to get a little bit better about telling the stories. This is an opportunity to tell a story, and maybe we'll get a website to match at some point, but it'll have to be a really good website. I think we're really interested actually in learning with others. And I think we want to, yes, it's about us as co-founding the Alliance, and it's about unincorporated King County. And yet, these issues don't stop at our borders. And we're going to be learning about, what more could we be doing around cooperative businesses and other ways of creating wealth in our businesses, about coaching and mental health around workforce. And, we'd love to learn with others and share whatever we learn as well. And I'll just put my email in the chat as well, in case anybody wants to get a hold of me directly.
I had one more thing to add. Again, I had immediate reaction. I was kind of processing on an earlier question, and it was around, see if I could scroll up here. I think it was, Roxana, it was your question around what is a call to action. I think just talking blatantly, if there's funders on this particular session, in terms of priorities, right? Like, they shift so quickly. And the thing I connect to, I played sports, is like, if you hire a new head coach and they're not successful in their first 2 years, and all of a sudden you go in a completely new direction, did you really allow them enough time to do what they needed to do? And to me, for unincorporated, there is such a hole that we are in terms of infrastructure, systems, policies, that puts us in such a deeper hole. 1 or 2 years of cycle of funding, that's just going to get us maybe almost looking above ground. And that's speaking very, very honestly. So I think in terms of that, it's not just that we're here and look at us, but it's like we need a lot of time and resources, frankly, to really get to a point where our folks have the infrastructure they need across all the different sectors of a healthy, thriving neighborhood, to help our folks, to have our communities be successful. And so I think that's just another piece, is just allowing time and focus in a certain geographic area from a funding standpoint or priorities, really kind of settle in and like allow a thing to occur, because that's how big of a hole we're really in.
Yeah, and I would just add, and I put this a little bit in the chat, that yes, we're in a hole. Yes, it's dire. Yes, we have a lot of needs, but we're not a collection of needs. Like, we're a community of ideas. We are talented. Like, the idea is like on the daily, like any good idea you hear from me, it's not from me. It's from other people I've learned from. It's our community leaders. Like, the youth I work with, like, really give me like 10 amazing ideas. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. Like, all of these need to be campaigns. And if you invest in that, if you don't need to invest in a charity model that's based on our needs, if you're curious about what's possible and you lean into our talent, like, we would love to find those kind of allies. Yes, we need resources, and we need the kind of resources that trust our talent and trust our communities.
I'll just echo both of those comments and share that I've been a part of recruiting community committee members, people to join supporting the affordable housing in Skyway, and in a number of ways. And it really is exciting, like Alejandra was sharing, how many talented, gifted, brilliant people are out there, and they're just waiting for that opportunity. And behind that opportunity is the coalition and Comunidad and White Center maybe struggling with capacity to get that email out, to get that opportunity to those people. And I think that can be frustrating from that funding capacity position. But from the community side, we are full to the brim with potential and ideas and community members that have already put the work in and that are waiting to put the work in. So it's just really exciting to be able to highlight some of that here with the work that we've done with the Alliance and moving forward, bringing in community.
Thank you so much, Ryan, Rebecca, Alejandra, Yasmeen. This has just been a wonderful session. And I hope that folks, all of the attendees that are still watching, feel empowered to get connected and support your efforts. I just wanted to let folks know that you can now go back to the main stage for the next portion of the day. Thanks again to all of our presenters, and thanks for sticking with us through the tech issues. We're definitely figuring it out as we go along here. So thank you so much to all of you.